We are going to actually use this forum, the Cape Town Conversations, to end a chapter and begin a new one. Over the last nearly 12 months now, under the leadership of Ambassador Sujan Chinoy, who's going to be speaking to us in a minute, Sachin Chaturvedi, who's in this room. Sachin, are you here? There you are. There's Sachin and a few others. India took on the mantle of leading the presidency and entrusted the ideas bank of the G20, the Think 20, in the hands of these able gentlemen who will join us. And of course, our organization, the Observer Research Foundation, was entrusted with the responsibility of being the Secretariat of making the trains run on time. But before we come to the secretarial work and we present to you, I think it is my honor and privilege to invite the Director General of the Mohan Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, Ambassador Sujan Chinoy, and the Chair of India's T20 to speak to us on the experience of 1 year, what we sought to do, where we are, and how he dreamt and what we should believe in as we hand over. So let me invite first Ambassador Sujan Chinoy to speak to us as the Chair of India's T20 effort. Ambassador Chinoy, the mic is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a great honor and privilege for me to be standing here before you at the Cape Town Conversation this morning in my capacity as the Think 20 Chair for India's G20 presidency. And I dare say that this galaxy of scholars and practitioners, researchers gathered here have over the past year engaged in deep research on several issues that are pressing and difficult, and in the face of adversity, they have accomplished this task in a great manner and in a very successful manner. I really wish to laud your efforts for this spectacular contribution that you made. My experience, ladies and gentlemen, as the Think 20 Chair for India over the past year has been very rewarding, largely because of the expertise and academic rigor that you brought to our deliberations. It's also, in no small measure, a result of the kind of support that I got from Dr. Samir Saran of the ORF and Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi of the RIS, as also the rest of you. Think 20 India set out to find answers to the most important priorities of our times, such as reforming multilateralism, digital inclusion, resilient global value chains, the green transition, and changing lifestyles for sustainable development. Throughout the year, we have interacted with a most enthusiastic and dynamic group of intellectuals from G20 countries and beyond, basically in accordance with the principle of leaving none behind. This ensured that our output was both representative and relevant. That the New Delhi G20 Leaders' Declaration was adopted unanimously is proof of our success, your success as well. It is flattering to note that some of the key recommendations made by T20 India were adopted at the summit level without any kind of doubt. This is most palpable in four main areas: multilateral reform, green transitions, digital public infrastructure, and above all, women-led development. You would agree that the Delhi Declaration is among the most ambitious that we have seen so far. Friends, the African Union's inclusion in the G20 at the Delhi summit is a great tribute, in my view, to Nelson Mandela, who devoted his life to struggle for justice and equality. Africa's rapid development could provide fresh momentum to inclusive global growth and give a new voice to the global South. Friends, a major takeaway of the Delhi Declaration was the launch of the Global Biofuels Alliance on the 9th of September by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the presence of the leaders of the United States of America, Brazil, Argentina, and Italy. As you all know, biofuels have lower emissions intensity than fossil fuels and therefore can play a crucial role in decarbonizing economies. 19 countries and 12 international organizations have signed on to this alliance, and they've given a commitment to expand the use of sustainable biofuels. I hope very much that many African countries will also follow suit. Friends, the launch of a mega India, Middle East, Europe Connectivity Corridor, IMEC, as the acronym goes, by India, the US, Saudi Arabia, and the European Union was another major outcome of the G20 declaration. This shipping and railway corridor will give impetus to economic development through enhanced connectivity and economic integration. We hope that the strife in the Middle East will end soon to enable renewed focus on developmental issues. We must all continue to dream big in the face of adversities. Ladies and gentlemen, today climate change, global warming, and environmental degradation are some of the greatest challenges that we face. India's economy is already 10% more energy efficient than both the global and the G20 average. India's example shows the importance of behavioral change and consumption, these choices at a personal level, in driving energy transitions. Prime Minister Modi has been personally invested in proposing the LIFE initiative, that's the acronym LIFE, now reflected in the G20 high-level principles on lifestyles for sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most outstanding features of the Delhi summit is the emergence of the One Future Alliance, an India-led multilateral and multi-stakeholder framework dedicated to sharing the successful Indian experience of using digital public infrastructure, a DPI for short, for the benefit of its 1.4 billion people. The India Stack, which is a moniker, as you all know, for the application programming interfaces used by India, combines a unique national digital identity with a unique payment interface. The Indian model of DPI has dramatically revolutionized digital payments and improved the financial inclusion of the poor. Friends, the scholars and experts who participated in the various task forces of Think 20 India, all of you have made rich contributions to the Delhi Declaration through your research papers and recommendations numbering in the hundreds. I should mention a few. The high-level principles on digitalization of trade documents and the voluntary and non-binding G20 policy recommendations for advancing financial inclusion and productivity gains through digital public infrastructure are among them. The recognition by the G20 of the role of artificial intelligence and data advances is also very relevant. So is the G20's commitment to accelerating innovations and investment focused on increasing agricultural productivity, reducing food loss and waste across the value chain, and improving marketing and storage to build more sustainable and climate-resilient agriculture and food systems. The renewed commitment to mobilizing adequate climate finance gives us all fresh hope. Friends, the reference to United Nations General Assembly Resolution 75/1 of 21 September 2020, which speaks of reinvigorated multilateralism, reforms, and international cooperation, I dare say is very encouraging. We must keep up the pressure for substantive reforms in global institutions such as the IMF, WTO, and especially the United Nations, and even more especially the United Nations Security Council. Social protection and women-led development, which were so far buried as footnotes in the G20 system, have been brought to the fore during India's G20 presidency. Promoting availability and access to social protection was a key recommendation of T20 India, especially for gig and platform workers. The G20 this year has formalized policy priorities on this issue which is annexed to the leaders' declaration as well. Friends, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our success so far is proof that effective dialogue and cooperation are not a myth. G20 India has been a people's G20. In fact, it's been a G20 for the peoples around the world. It has proved to be a G20 of the global south, the outgoing troika of Indonesia, India, and Brazil, and the incoming troika with the addition of South Africa. We all share a common purpose, that of achieving growth and prosperity for all. The able support of our Indonesian, Brazilian, and South African colleagues deserves special mention as we formally hand over the T20's reins to our Brazilian colleagues today here in Cape Town, the mother city, as it's known. And it's entirely appropriate and apposite that we should be doing so not far from the Cape of Good Hope, which is really synonymous with hope, because it was in 1888 that we had Bartholomew Diaz come across to the Cape of Good Hope and announced that there was a route from Europe to India via the Cape of Good Hope. But I would say that this is really a route that connects Africa and India. And I do hope very much as we stand in Cape Town before you that we can use not only the G20 presidency of India, but the ones to come, the leadership of Brazil, and thereafter South Africa, to build even better bridges and even better routes, navigation routes between the global north and the global south, as well as among us in the global south. Much has been done, yet we cannot simply rest on our laurels if the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and especially Africa's Agenda 2063, are to be achieved in the face of the many adversities and challenges that will inevitably come our way. And to borrow a phrase from the poet Robert Frost, we have miles to go before we sleep. I do hope that we can all work together, that we can continue to work together to consolidate the gains and the progress that we have achieved so far. I thank you for your support to me as the Think 20 India Chair. I wish Brazil good luck, and thank you all once again.
I now want to take this opportunity to present to the Honorable Minister, who's kindly agreed to be with us during this particular short segment, to present to her a report card of what Think 20 India was able to do. I also want to chronicle it for history, in some sense, before all of you, because this is not an India outcome or an India output. This is a G20 output, and we should all, in many ways, applaud ourselves for working very hard through this year and for producing ideas that found resonance in the Leaders' Summit. So let me request my colleagues to put a presentation up. I'm just going to put some numbers and figures before all of you as part of our report document. I have a clicker, and I'm going to use that clicker to basically run through this presentation. As the chair mentioned, we had these 7 task forces that picked up some of the most important questions, from macroeconomics to digital infrastructure, resilience and life, the clean and green energy transitions, global financial order, SDGs, and of course, multilateralism and the reforms. So 7 big task forces. We had 131 chairs and co-chairs from 88 international institutions and 37 Indian institutions. So we had a very large cluster of individuals and institutions represented in what would become the core group that would work on the ideas that would define the G20 presidency. We also, of course, had a secretariat of close to 40 people within the Observer Research Foundation who were coordinating all these task forces, who were managing research, bringing out the publications on time, hosting events, and communicating all the work that we did to the world. Eventually, we produced 323 policy briefs. Let me just tell you, this is twice the number that has ever happened before, simply because all of you from the Global South participated with great vigor. The contributions from this continent, from Asia, from Latin America have been outstanding. I think it is the Global South that has contributed to this vast array of ideas that we produced. We produced 46 short forms and essays. We produced 17 special reports and publications. It was a very busy publication year, and I hope this momentum is maintained. And this is just a breakup of the various task forces, but you would see that it was consistent throughout, and of course, we saw the global financial system getting particularly greater attention, because I think in some ways the world needs to readjust and reset the way we distribute finance and for what purpose and to which geographies. So that was basically a summary of what we did. Let me also report back to you that 75 countries or individuals from 75 countries contributed to these policy briefs. We had 710 partner institutions who lent their names and their ideas and their strength to the work we did. We were not able to maintain parity between women and men authors, but we strived hard, we tried to work hard, we tried to bring more in, and hopefully this number will grow and it will reach parity. We finally produced a communique, which is a document which the chair, Ambassador Sujan Chinoy, mentioned found resonance with the Leaders Summit. But we also produced 7 other task force statements, so that all the ideas that were shared by the various experts that we brought in and could not be part of the communique are still part of public literature. They are available for everyone to dip into, cite, use in the work they do. And of course, we had lots of events. Besides the main events and the summits and the media conference, we hosted 64 events in India and abroad, focused on really 4 big ideas throughout, and took the G20 literally to all the regions of the world. We had a virtual convening from Brazil. We did not have a physical one, but I'm sure we will be doing plenty this year with Luciana and team in your continent. So it was a global effort where we went all over to try and bring the conversation to different communities, and we are delighted that the final Indian T20 conference is happening in Cape Town. This is our final event that we do in person, Madam Minister, and it's happening in the mother city. In some sense, this is where we close the effort for this year, although I must say that we have a virtual event in Egypt lined up for later this month, which will really be the final one. These are the handles that we have been running from the previous years. If any of you want to follow the work, please follow these. And in many ways, this is the report card of India's T20 in numbers. I think we can all applaud ourselves for the work we did. So congratulations to everyone. With that, we draw the curtains down on India's T20 presidency. And let me congratulate Sachin, my friend who's sitting there, and I'll have you on stage in a minute. And let me congratulate Ambassador Chinoy and a few others who were part of the core group who shaped the presidency. Let me also really, really thank my colleagues, 38 of them, who worked harder than any secretariat has ever to do more in terms of events, publications, forums, convenings, and diversity. So please join me in applauding my colleagues. But new beginnings, the journey continues. And to now take over and take this journey forward, the journey of the G20, the journey of shaping the future that's sustainable, that's fair and equitable, and that is inclusive and planet-friendly. Let me invite the new chairs of the T20 process. Let me first invite Luciana Servo, President, the Institute of Applied Economic Research, to speak to us. Luciana, the T20 is yours, so is the mic. And before you speak to us, I'll invite you to come here. I want to hand over this document. A report card that I presented is now yours.
I just want to start to congratulating our distinguished guests, the former President Thabo Manaki and the Minister of International Relations, Dr. Nalet Pandor. Thank you very much for being here in our Handover. First of all, I wanted to really thank Dr. Samir Saran and his team from ORF for inviting us to be here at Cape Town and for this section of the India handover to the T20 in Brazil. I also want to thank Ambassador Chinoy, for the chair of the T20, for his amazing job, and Dr. Sachin Sajuverde from Greece. The T20 India was incredible, was a huge effort, and we are all thankful for that. Thank you all for joining us today in this moment of the handover of the T20 India to T20 Brazil. We reinforce the significance of the T20 as an engagement group within the G20. The T20 serves as a vital bridge between research institutions, think tanks, and policymakers, maintaining a continuous process of dialogue and collaboration. Today, the three institutions that are part of the T20 Organizing Committee, the Institute of Applied Economic Research, IPEA, which I am the president, the Alexandre Gusmão Foundation, with Ambassador Márcia Loureiro is the president, and also the Brazilian International Relations Institution, CEBRI, which are represented by Dr. Izabella Teixeira and Luciana, who are also from CEBRI. And we want to emphasize the importance of the T20 committed to inclusion, its dedication for fostering a multi-institutional approach, and the impact it has on global governance. The T20 plays a central role in shaping the policy recommendations that are presented to G20 leaders. This engagement group brings together some of the brightest minds from around the world, representing a diverse array of perspectives and expertise. Its commitment to maintaining a continuous process is fundamental in addressing the ever-evolving challenges faced by our global community. The world is dynamic and our challenges are complex. The T20 recognizes this and operates as an ongoing platform for dialogue and collaboration. It doesn't confine itself to periodic meetings, but instead ensure a continuous exchange of ideas, research, and policy recommendations. This adaptability allows the T20 to respond to emerging global issues, providing timely and informed advice to G20. One of the T20's distinctive features is an unwavering commitment to inclusion. Inclusivity is not merely a buzzword, but a guiding principle that shapes the composition of T20 itself. By bringing together diverse voices, the T20 ensures that its policy recommendations are reflective of a broad range of perspectives, experience, and expertise. This commitment is not only a moral imperative, but a strategic one, as solutions crafted with diverse input are more robust and equitable. Continuity, inclusion, and equity are central ideas for Brazilian presidency during the G20. So the sixth task force that will be going on through the T20 presidency in Brazil will have this continuity effort. Continuity in a task force of reforming the international financial infrastructure. This task force will lead with topics like financial system rules and regulations and global financial safety nets to promote stability, sustainability, and equity. Multilateral development bank reforms, addressing debt burden of developing countries and facilitating their access to concessional resources, ensuring a fair global tax architecture that facilitates domestic and international resource mobilization, overall SDG financing needs, pathways, then the road to architecture reform of the international finance architecture, and the role of ESG metrics and taxonomies in promoting SDG financing. Another task force is trade and investment for sustainable and inclusive growth. It will also take the subtopics of trade and investment to fight inequality and poverty, and hunger and foster social inclusion, trade and investment, climate action and sustainability, women in trade, trade and digital transformation, promoting greater participation of MSME in trade and global chains, and dealing with neo-protectionism and the changing features of global value change. A third task force will be the continuity of strengthening multilateralism and global governance. It will talk about the G20 role on strengthening multilateralism, the UN reform of the WTO, global health issues and One Health approach, new norms and metrics for international development cooperation and global public goods provision, the role of non-state actors, non-governmental organizations, and subnational units in multilateral governance, and assessing at G20 pledges and action. Also, continue and reinforce inclusive digital transformation, digital inclusion and meaningful and universal connectivity, digital transformation and platformization of public service, digital integration, data and protection, cybersecurity, new technologies for the SDG and decent work, challenge opportunities and governance for international intelligence and global digital governance and regulation and digital platform. As Brazil G20 launched two special task forces, one against hunger and fighting poverty, and other climate action, we have two task forces in G20 to deal with these topics. Sustainable climate action includes just energy, for fostering sustainable, inclusive, just energy, accelerating transition to a low-carbon economy and fostering sustainable consumption and production, fostering investment and open innovation to support social, bioeconomic, and nature-based solutions, investing in social sustainability, inclusive, and resilience infrastructures, accessing multilateral funds, operationalizing climate justice. And the most important one for Brazilian presidency is also fighting inequality, poverty, and hunger. You have promoting policies for fighting poverty and hunger and the whole of the trilateral cooperation, fostering food security and nutrition for sustainable food system, expanding access to social protection-based services, promoting universal health coverage, reforming policies, fiscal policies, and fight gender and race discrimination and inequalities in healthcare. Inclusion will reinforce the role of African Union as part of G20. As the minister has said, it's really, really important for us to have the African Union as part of G20+, because this will encourage us to go deeper in the process of inclusion, promotion, equity, and development. The three institutions of Brazilian G20 are led by women, myself, Ambassador Márcia, and Julida Leite. We are committed to foster the gender agenda during the G20 Brazil, not only as a subtopic, but as a transversal topic in the G20 agenda. Inclusion also stands to engage with stakeholders from civil society, business, women, science, labor, youth, and organizations. This holistic approach ensures that the recommendations put forth are not academically sound, but also resonate with realities of people's lives. We want the G20 to be as inclusive as it has been, and also to bring a new agenda for these other topics and be part of an important process in the G20. We also want to invite the think tanks for a virtual meeting in the first days of December, so they will present our site and also other details of our process. Thank you very much.
I can tell you that you are in for the ride of your life, Luciana, the next 1 year. Let me now invite Ambassador Márcia Loureiro, the president of the FUNAG, the Alexandre de Gusmão Foundation. Ambassador, can I request you to come on stage?
Good morning, everyone. Your Excellency, former President Thabo Mbeki, head of the Mbeki Foundation, we're truly honored by your presence here. and also Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor. Thank you so much for sharing your dreams and your strategic vision with us. Distinguished authorities, Ambassador Chinoy, Dr. Saran, Dr. Chaturvedi, my colleagues, Dr. Luciana Servo and Izabella Teixeira, and a special greeting to Deputy Consul General of Brazil in Cape Town, Ambassador Ricardo Diniz. Let me begin by congratulating T20 India for a very productive year. T20 has successfully addressed complex issues, challenging issues, and you, as well as the previous Indonesian leadership, leave a sound legacy for us to build upon in 2024. I would also like to greet our South African hosts. It is a pleasure to be here in this vibrant city, in this beautiful country. To us, holding the handover ceremony here symbolizes the intention of T20 Brazil to develop a close relationship and a fluid dialogue with our South African counterparts throughout the year until the next handover from Brazil to South Africa and beyond that. We just heard my colleague, Dr. Luciana Servo, about our vision and our plans for T20 during the Brazilian presidency, whose motto is building a fair world and a sustainable planet. On my part, I'd like to stress one specific guideline set by President Lula in New Delhi that will be very important for us in our work in T20. In his words, Brazil's presidency must ensure that engagement groups will have the opportunity to report their conclusions and recommendations to government representatives. This guideline was reiterated by him 3 days ago in Brasilia when he said that society must be seen as an ally in an agenda that is relevant to Brazil, but is also relevant to the entire developing world. In line with this presidential guidance, the Sherpa track is encouraging the engagement groups to move up the delivery of their recommendations and proposals to coincide with the mid-2024 Sherpa meeting so that these proposals and the recommendations can be considered in a timely manner for possible use in the final documents of the leaders and of the 2 official tracks. So let us make the best possible use of this receptive attitude, of this openness towards the contribution of the engagement groups. Let us not miss this opportunity to be heard and to make a difference. Another point I'd like to underscore is that we will be working hard, we are doing this already, to mobilize the global think tank community, especially in Africa and in Latin America. We're making an outreach effort toward those regions in order to increase the representation of African and Latin American think tanks in T20. Of course, at the same time, we want to preserve the participation of think tanks and research centers from other regions. They have been in T20 for years. They have a lot of knowledge and expertise to share with us, and they have given a major contribution over these years. We see the Cape Town conversation as a great opportunity to convey this message of inclusiveness, of representativeness. Following the entry of the African Union in G20, this coming week, the chair of the African Union Commission will visit Brazil. This is a concrete step towards a meaningful participation in G20, and in T20, we will be working to achieve the same goal. But I am also thinking of Latin America, and I know that here at the Cape Town Conversation we have important think tanks and research institutions from Argentina, from Colombia, from Mexico, and we believe that T20 can be a strong pillar of the bridge between the research communities on both sides of South Atlantic. Just one example of the importance of increasing the representation of those two regions and increasing the dialogue between them. We know that the COP30 of the Climate Convention will be held in Brazil in 2025, so 1 year after the Brazilian G20 presidency. So, of course, climate and sustainable development will be central themes for our presidency. In T20, African and Latin American think tanks could join forces and, who knows, maybe offer an important contribution for the coordination of positions at COP30. Countries that have tropical forests, for instance, why not use T20 to exchange ideas and to elaborate joint recommendations? This is just one example. Another topic of interest to those two regions, to all the regions actually, is improving the financing mechanisms for sustainable development and climate action. Another central issue is the fight against inequality, mentioned here at different moments. It's central, again, to everyone, because there are inequalities among countries and among regions, but there are also inequalities within countries, even the most affluent ones. This issue, as President Luciana Servo just mentioned, will be directly addressed in Task Force 1, but in fact, it is an overarching theme. In our view, it should be addressed in all task forces when we discuss just energy transition, an inclusive digital transformation, when we talk about international financing mechanisms, trade and investment, and multilateral governance as a whole. Closely linked to the fight against inequality is the role of new technologies. They can have a transformative power, they can create opportunities, or they can, paradoxically, as we know, increase inequality. So I believe it is our task in T20 to look at new digital technologies, new energy sources, all kinds of innovation as catalysts for inclusion. T20 is the perfect environment for us to reflect on these issues, perhaps together with other engagement groups, such as S20. And by the way, interaction with other engagement groups will also be very important, will be one of our priorities. Those were just some thoughts that I wanted to share with you. We are indeed very happy to be here for the handover and for the Cape Town conversation. We, T20 Brazil, see ourselves as facilitators of a collaborative exercise that we hope will be truly global, because complex issues cannot be addressed by countries individually, and ultimately because the G20 deliberations have an impact not only on G20 member countries, but on the international community as a whole. We are fully aware of this responsibility, as was mentioned last evening by the Brazilian delegation. So, with this, I conclude my remarks. I thank you all for the attention, and I hope to see you all in Brazil very soon. Thank you.
Let me invite the final speaker from the Brazilian T20 leadership, Izabella Teixeira, trustee of the Brazilian Center for International Relations, but also the former Minister for Environment. And let me invite you, ma'am, to speak to us.
Good morning. It's very important to observe that we are coming to also to work hard, consider think tanks T20, but I'm personally engaged to have more African think tanks joining us in this new trajectory in Brazil. So welcome, African think tanks, welcome to Brazil. My second point here, it's also important to observe how our work will come closer to the societies, to people, not only to the power, and this is the political power. This is very important, because when you go into the international meeting, you mobilize people. Our country will be fully dedicated for this, but unfortunately, the majority of society never knows what's happening, why you take the decision. We are working for these societies. We are working for people. This is very important to remember when you join the next year in Brazil. My third point here is to observe that the international crisis, when you go, including the triple environmental crisis, come together with democracy crisis. That's why I'm trying to emphasize here the importance to value democracy, to value societies. We have this in our country, this crisis in the past, recently, and you know a lot, the meaning how we need to fight a lot to preserve democracy. And T20 will be part of this. Be sure of this, my dear friends. But I'd like to remember also that it's very interesting and very important to make sure when you have South Africa presence by 2025, that you can have a balance and considering what global South voice must emerge by 2025 after 5 years of G77 plus China countries leading the G20. Tell me, this is our responsibility if you want to change the world. Madam Minister knows this better than I. And you need to know what's our role as G20 and also Global South to make sure that you cannot shape the narrative, only shape the narrative, but we should be transformative if we want a better world and a better planet. And this means that our responsibilities come together with our societies in our political role to try to change the world, because what's happening today, unfortunately, we are still discussing the crisis of the past, not the crisis of the future. I'm sorry, but it's true. We have been discussing 30 years of climate change crisis, also biodiversity, also pollution. It's the same way. What are the new crises? Wars. We have 2 wars now. You have a pandemic probably is new, the last 100 years. But we need to learn what is happening today in the world in such a way that you can rethink the think tank's role to influence the leaders and to influence G20 in the next years. It's very important to observe this based on my experience and also to understand how it's really important to reconnect the Global South and the Global North. Okay? Reducing the gaps that you have, but also promoting new agendas to rebuild trust, credibility, and solidarity. We need to avoid the perspectives of homogeneity of the power. What's good, what's excellent, as a woman from the Global South, in my opinion, is that we have diversity. We have a multicultural countries. We are a multicultural society, and this is very important if you want to change the world, if you want to transform things. And why you need to do this? Because the new societies, the new generations that are there, they're not coming, they're there. They're asking for this. And if you go into multilateral systems, we are learning a lot that the states, they are not enough. We need to learn how to bring societies on board and to make sure that we are committed with the future, avoid setbacks in the future. And this is really something hard to promote because people used to struggle between short-term and long-term perspectives. How we can provide long-term solutions if we still are discussing short-term pressure? We are not able to provide solutions in short-term perspectives. I come from a country that will have solutions for short-term perspectives considering nature crisis. It is very important to observe because today we are not discussing energy transition more, it seems. We are discussing, again, back energy security. We are raising the emissions on carbon emissions. Read the last report that was launched last week, consider the emissions gap, and let's check what's happening in the world. Everyone likes to discuss the future without dealing with the present. It's easy because it's like a Netflix TV show. We are contracting new seasons of crisis. Madam Minister, it's true. Absolutely true. So I think that we have really a huge responsibility and also opportunity as think tanks to address the key issue that must be addressed if you want to change. And of course, Brazil is a country with singularities, but also we have solutions. And you need to act based on solutions. And you need to be transformative together in such a way that you can indeed promote what's really important, how to deal with social and environmental inequalities, and also how make things in life better and just. I'd like to remember you that it's very important that you could discuss things and you can bring people and can have all these arrangements that India shared with us. It was fantastic, but look, to make really people committed, John, Mary, Harris, they must understand what we are doing. If you want to be transformative, if you want to change the things. If you want to postpone things, let's do what we're doing today. But if you want to be committed, come, work, discuss, write, invite people to discuss, make sure that diversity is the asset that we have on our hands. This is why Global South matters, because we have diversity. And this is why you are important to promote solutions around the world. My last comment here is actually based on this. Let's unlock and unblock the future in the present. We need to bring the future to the present. When we have President Lula back, I'm very honored to be his former minister. We used to say, international community, we used to say that Brazil is back. I used to ask, is the future back? I think it's very important that we must discuss the future in the present, but more than this, we need to not stop solving the problems of the past. We need to new stories based on the future. So welcome to Brazil, welcome to our leadership together with you, and I'm absolutely sure that the next 2 years, 2024, 2025, that we have Brazil in G20, Brazil in COP30, and we have also South Africa in G20, and also Brazil in BRICS+. If you cannot change the things, forget the world. Come on, let's do better than we are doing today, and let's drink low-carbon caipirinha. I invite you to come to Brazil. Thank you very much.
Now let me invite a few of our Indian colleagues to complete the handover ceremony. Let me invite the chair of India's T20, Ambassador Sujan Chinoy. Let me invite Sachin Chaturvedi, the member of the core group. May I now invite the Secretariat, the directors of the Secretariat, to formally hand over the keys to the future to you. So let me invite the Secretariat Director Sunena and Nilanjan Ghosh, Sunena Kumar and Nilanjan Ghosh, to formally hand over the keys to Brazil.